Ladies and gents, federal employees, today's topic is retiring, putting your application, and what time in the year is probably going to be the slowest time to do that, right? And when I talk about slow, I'm talking about OPM. OPM, who's going to be processing your application, they have really busy times and or slower times. I think they're always busy. They always got lots to do. But there's times during the year that are very busy. And they're very natural times where it makes a lot of sense for a lot of folks to retire, and so there's a surge. And in the first 2 months, January, February of every year, OPM gets about 30% of all applications they're going to get in a year. They get about 30% in the first couple months. So it's very busy, right? They've got a lot to do, a lot of applications, right? So, for example, of this month, or of this year, 2021, they received close to 30,000 applications during the first 2 months, right? That's a lot of people retiring. That's a lot of documents to look at. That's a lot of things to process, right? And OPM is often viewed as the bad guy, right? They're the ones that slow things up and mess things up, and they've got a tough job. I feel for them. They've got a lot to do, and so I definitely don't envy their job. It's hard. And so for you as a federal employee, what does this mean for you? Well, I'm going to put up a picture here on the video later, after in editing, right, of the chart of how many applications come in and kind of what it's looked like over the last 12-ish months for OPM. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't retire in the first couple months of the year. That shouldn't change all your plans necessarily, but I think it can be helpful to know, hey, how quickly is my application bound or supposed to be processed depending on when you retire, right? Because there's only so much you can do to make sure that your application is processed quickly. Because as you know, and I've talked about this in other videos, that the quicker your application is processed, the quicker you get your full pension and your full monthly check, right? You may get interim checks early on, but you won't get the full amount until your application is completely processed. And there are some things you can do to help, but you can't do everything, right? And the few things that you can do to help is make sure you fill out your application correctly, right? There's a few things, like if you're divorced and your ex gets a piece of your pension, then make sure you have a divorce decree in there in your application. If you're electing for less than a full survivor benefit for your pension, make sure you have a notarized signature from your spouse. All these little details make a huge difference, because if you don't have any of these things, then OPM has to come back, they have to ask for more things, and it slows the process down, right? And so if you want the best chance for your application to get processed as quickly as possible, then really go slow through that application, right? Make sure, even simple things like your name, social security number, all your information is perfect. It's correct, it's all there. Any documents that you need. Let's say you bought back military time. Make sure you have the documentation that shows, hey, you bought this back, this counts, we're good to go, right? You want to make OPM's job as easy as possible, because then they'll take it, it's a lot easier for them. They don't have to work with you to get documentation, because that's a pain. That's a big pain, especially as you're waiting to get your money and it's taking a long time, right? So the first thing, like I said, fill out your application correctly and really make sure you understand all the questions that are asked on there, and that you have all the documentation that you need. Second, make sure you give your application to your agency nice and early, right? 90 days is a good rule of thumb. Depending on your agency, it can be less or maybe more for even the larger ones. It depends on how your HR does it at your agency. But get it to them nice and early, right? You don't want to have issues there. Get it to them nice and early, and then, of course, do your documentation all right. Get your application perfect, right? And once that's done, well, the next thing you do is be prepared. Have the savings that you need so that while you're waiting, you're not going to be stressed. Because it could be stressful, right? When you're waiting for OPM to process everything, you want to make sure you have the savings to ride the wave out. Even if it takes months and months, even a year plus, you want to make sure that you aren't going to starve, right? Obviously, we'd love our application to be processed very quickly, but things happen. Things happen, and we don't know what the future is going to hold, so you have to focus on what you can control, what you can do, and one of those things is being prepared. Having the savings ready to go so that you can fill the gap. And of course, OPM is going to come back. They're going to repay you for everything that they should have paid early during the time. It's all going to be paid, it's just a matter of when. So have the savings to fill the gap in the meantime. So today's a short one. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.